Hi everyone, I'm John Pett, author, speaker, and performer.
And I'm Jeff Civillico, entertainer, comedian, and almost as much fun as John.
And together, we're on a mission to take you on a journey that explores and reveals the critical elements for you to survive and thrive within the digital transformation.
We will be here to guide you, to engage you, and get you involved.
To take your questions and get the answers from the experts and execs.
So grab a beverage, get comfortable, and get excited.
Because this is MEF Infinite Edge. Today, we've got top service and technology experts joining us to explore federation of trusted and interconnected partners in complex service supply chains, delivering a multitude of cloud-based services in minutes, not months. Let's go. Federation, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the starship Enterprise. Its mission? To explore digital transformation, to seek out new services and new technologies, to boldly go where no man has gone before. All right, it worked. Hey, welcome back everyone to episode 6 of the MEF Infinite Edge series. I am John Pett, your host and captain, and yes, Trekkie for today's voyage as we discuss federations for enterprise digital transformation. It's all about ecosystems of complex service supply chains coming together harmoniously in warp speed automation. And as a big Star Trek fan, I was kind of geeking out over the connections to this episode. The focus on Federation and the Starship Enterprise were pretty obvious, but did you know that technology used in the original Star Trek series, airing over 50 years ago, ultimately became a reality? That's right, I mean, cell phones, Bluetooth, voice recognition, and even video conferencing, all of which are now a big part of our work from anywhere world. Like MEF's Federation vision for today, it was very forward-looking stuff. But we're not there yet. As we navigate this new space, we've still got some work to do, which reminds me, I should probably record today's log for Starfleet Command. This thing, it never works. Excuse me, technical difficulties. Okay. Captain's log. Stardate 060921. The USS Enterprise has entered uncharted territory. We are surrounded by disaggregated network cloud and technology providers and MEF, leaders of the Borg. On board, our digital transformation grows more challenging. Unforeseen events have compromised our engines and drained our reserve power. If there is a solution, it almost certainly will involve an alliance within this ecosystem. Thank you, all done. Now, throughout the show, we'll be hearing from various members of Starfleet Command, our sponsors, speakers, and analysts about the vision for forming these new and necessary federations. After all, the days of basic connectivity services are gone. Instead, we see service providers offer increasingly complex and dynamic services, combining connectivity, compute and storage with low latency and high levels of security. But since no one service or cloud provider has every single component of these services in its inventory, they will have to engage with a wide range of partners in a very large, heterogeneous, and competitive ecosystem. Stick around. Today's episode is going to be very interesting, but first, let's take a quick look back at the highlights from our previous episodes.
You can imagine that when you get to that level of latency, you can create some truly innovative use cases that allow us to use the network to move workloads at the speed at which the mind processes reality.
We believe that this digital transformation journey is all about customer experience transformation and ease of doing business with our customers going forward.
while the standards are there, I think getting the ecosystem to work together, make sure that the expected outcome and slicing performance is extended beyond network borders. And I really think like a group like MEF can help standardize these and make sure they work well.
The ability to virtually slice across the network and offer different capabilities for the customers, use cases, and services as they require.
SASE services are really expected to provide an optimal combination of networking and security.
These more complex business scenarios that are actually great opportunities for everyone involved.
Networking is cool again, right? Networking is cool again.
Clearly, the range of topics we've covered in this series is pretty impressive. And all of our previous episodes are available on demand right here on this platform, thanks to the generous support of our sponsors, speakers, and analysts. Don't forget to show your appreciation by visiting our sponsor booths below and chatting up our speakers and analysts, as well as other attendees, by using the chat feature to your right. Okay, we're moving ahead. Warp Speed Factor 1. With our first segment of the day, an executive panel on the evolution of alliances. Joining us for that discussion, Kevin Vachon, Chief Operating Officer, MEF, Jason McGee-Abe, Publisher and Commercial Editor, Capacity, and Chris Bollinger, Founder and Co-Director, Moby. Let's see what's out there.
Hi, good morning, afternoon, and evening from wherever you are joining us from. It's a pleasure to be invited to take part in the Infinite Edge series, Episode 6, Federations for Digital Transformation. Here we've got an executive panel discussion where I'm delighted to be with MEF's very own COO, Kevin Vachon, and also Chris Ballinger, founder and co-director of Moby. Moby is a non-profit alliance of many of the world's largest vehicle manufacturers, along with startups, transit agencies, insurers, smart city leaders, and technology companies, to name a few. They are also in ongoing works and a partnership with MEF, so today is a very timely conversation. I'm Jason McGee-Abe, Publisher and Commercial Editor of Capacity Media, and I was formerly the Editor-in-Chief of Capacity Magazine. Now, for those of you that don't know, Capacity is the essential source of news and events in the wholesale carrier, service provider, and digital infra space, focused heavily on the critical business issues that carriers face in the rapidly changing telecoms market, and how they and other players in the space have evolved. Now, today, we'll be touching on the critical issue of business networks and federations coming together. It's a topic that has come into the mainstream, and there's been an explosion of interest over the past 18 months, especially amid the COVID pandemic, remote working, and obviously identifying lots of IoT opportunities. Use cases such as connected thermal cameras, detecting potential COVID-19 infections, health monitoring, wearables, sensors, all of these things have really shown the enabling effect of the future. And enterprises and smart city leaders alike are increasingly keen on this area as well. Now, with opportunities, there's clear challenges. Unstructured and fragmented security, standards, and performance of real-time intelligence. So we'll be touching on all of these areas today, the role that federations can play in solving this last mile problem, which is very clear and imperative for the economy of tomorrow. And trust, reputation, assurance, and credibility are imperative to this subject. So with that, I'd like to welcome you all again. And once all of this enabling piece is sort of created, it'll potentially open up trillions of dollars worth of new economic activity and opportunities. So on that, I'd like to welcome Kevin, MEF's very own Executive Director of Infinite Edge, to hear more about why MEF has in particular singled out this theme of federations and what specific areas of work is being conducted at the moment. And we'll also hear from Chris, of course, about the great work that Moby is carrying out as well. But Kevin, over to you. Why has MEF picked the theme of federations?
Yeah, thank you, Jason, and great to have you here. And we really value the the partnership we've had with Capacity over so many years. And Chris, a new relationship with MEF. Thank you very much for joining us today. The topic of federation is going to be very central to digital transformation, we believe. And let me just sort of paint the picture of where MEF came from and why we're at where we're at here. So, our focus on our evolution to federations really started with the work that we've done in the wholesale space, right? We've always had an emphasis on wholesale services standards, connectivity services standards, certifications. We evolved that to an automation framework. So technically how carriers could automate services amongst themselves, wholesale services. We built out, APIs for that purpose. Once you build out the APIs, it starts to take you into commercial issues because you're dealing with things like quoting and ordering and billing and so on and so forth. So you saw MEF moving up the market, if you will, or up the stack into more of the commercial space. And as you get into things like, especially billing and settlement, you're starting to look at smart bilateral contracts. You're looking at distributed ledger technologies, blockchain, et cetera, et cetera. It's really a set of ingredients that are required for ultimately carriers to have fully automated commerce amongst themselves, and that is essentially leading to what MEF will ultimately define as a federation. Federations mean different things to different people, and it'll be something important for MEF. So that's number one. Number two is we see that the work that we've done, because we've put a lot, there's years of heavy lifting that's gone into this. That work, it can be very portable and can be leveraged by other organizations as well, other federations, if you will, other communities, and so on. And we have a great example of that with Mobi today. So that's how we got here, and that's why we believe the topic is really important as part of our Infinite Edge series. Let me talk a little bit about the rest of the episode. It's very fitting to have Paul from PCCW Global, their CTO, with us here today. We have to give a ton of credit to their CEO, Mark Halfinger, who really had the vision, what MEF could do to build on the great work we've done, in the services area for so many years, and really encouraging us to move into commercial area work. And he was really a great driver. So it's great to have PCCW because they've been just a tremendous supporter and contributor to that work. So we're going to hear from Paul, and we've got the analysts coming in talking about the drivers for this for federation-oriented capabilities. We've got Daniel Barlev, our VP of Strategic Programs, who's going to outline more specifically the work that MEF is doing, the different areas of work that will contribute to federation. And we have deeper dives from some very senior representatives of our member community coming in. So we think we've got a pretty well-rounded set of topics for today. So I think, Chris, it's probably a great time to turn it over to you and tell us a little bit about Mobi and maybe the relationship with MEF.
Sure. Thanks. And thanks for inviting me to join the conversation today. Maybe a little bit of background on Mobi. Mobi is the Mobility Open Blockchain Initiative. We launched out of the work a bunch of automakers and technology companies were doing about 4 years ago. What we found is that everybody was excited about this new technology of distributed ledgers and collaborative business networks. Everybody was doing experiments, POCs, putting cars on ledger, putting infrastructure on ledgers, work in supply chains, in rideshare and car share on ledgers. And what we found was the technology worked great. It was fairly easy to put a car on a ledger, but very hard to do anything with it. We all doing the same POCs, all finding that it was impossible to scale. And in hindsight, it was fairly obvious why. These business networks, blockchains, ledgers are essentially collaborative tools and collaborative technologies. And if you don't have standards, plumbing, common ways of identifying things, settling things, there's no way to get from a POC to an enterprise scale application. There's no way to get to the customers. There's no way to capture all the efficiencies and benefits that everybody talks about. And so we began meeting first in small groups under the auspices of MIT Media Lab and later in Silicon Valley. And the group just got larger and larger, and pretty soon it became obvious that we had to have something formal. And we officially launched Moby a little over 3 years ago with 35 members. We've grown to over 100 since then. And the whole purpose of it is to work on the creating standard identities, the plumbing, the schemas for business collaboration. Why is that important? Because if you have those kinds of standards identities, then any actor within the network can talk directly to any other. You can share data with any other, know what that data means, and what that does is it creates the ability to really transform end-to-end processes. If you think about what a business does, businesses are great at creating process efficiencies, re-engineering business processes within their walls. But when they start trying to do it across business networks or through value chains, it gets really, really difficult. But if every node you add to a value chain, it increases the value chain arithmetically, but it increases the complexity geometrically. And so you add a few nodes, you add a few steps, and the re-engineering just becomes, and process improvement becomes impossible. In an automated business network, the idea is that if everybody can trust, if everything is visible, if everybody can deal directly and trust the data with everybody else, that re-engineering becomes much, much simpler, right? It goes back to an arithmetic process. So that's basically the motivation behind Moby, what we hope to achieve. And maybe we can talk a little later about some of what we're doing. But I'd be curious to hear from some of the others. What else are you seeing, particularly in your industry, in terms of federations and business networks?
Yeah, I'll make a couple of points there. Firstly, in my intro, I probably neglected to highlight the importance of identity as forward-looking MEF work that we're just getting started. So the notion that it's obviously a critical ingredient to the evolution of what we consider to be a federation. And you look at the Moby MEF opportunity, it would be Moby, for example, their members being able to utilize or to recognize the integrity of a MEF identity as they perhaps leverage the MEF automation framework to acquire services, that sort of thing in an automated way. So that's really important, an important example of federations working together, if you will. But I think, when I introduced the topic a little while ago, it was really around the intercarrier side of things. We've seen a tremendous growth in interest in trying to take that work and make it more portable. If you look at what's going on the enterprise side of things, obviously they're going through their digital transformation. Enterprises want to buy in an automated way a whole suite of services. They're not just connectivity services or not just cloud services. There's a whole range of services required to deliver solutions to enterprises. They have to be orchestrated, automated. So whereas MEF started in the intercarrier area, we're aggressively doing API work to enable enterprise automation. So the enterprise, the APIs between the edge and the enterprise, but we've made that work vary in those APIs product independent, if you will, product agnostic. So MEF started focusing on connectivity service transactions, but it's now architected so an enterprise really could buy anything using MEF APIs. There's a lack of standardization that's gone on between the for APIs, for example, at the enterprise level, between the enterprise and the service provider, for example, or the enterprise, the cloud providers. So what we're seeing is our work can be the foundation for that. So that then takes us to the federation topic, where it's of interest of like a Moby or others for them to not reinvent the wheel and to utilize that MEF work to ultimately achieve their end goals, which is delivering services to their vertical specific stakeholders.
So maybe I can pick up on that. I think it doesn't matter too much what you call it or how you define a federation. The idea behind it is extremely powerful. Whether you call it a data commons or an automated business network or a consortium chain or a private permissioned environment, doesn't matter. What matters is that businesses will be forced to create these by competitive pressures and efficiencies. Those that don't find themselves taking advantage of the opportunities provided by these automated settlements and end-to-end processes and the ability to deal directly with trusted credentials and IDs with everybody else in the network will find themselves at a huge competitive disadvantage. I think that this interest in federations and consortiums, what you're seeing is the first steps of this.
Yeah, and I think, Chris, you make a really good point. I mean, we use federation almost as a sort of a concept, but it's really about communities coming together under some sort of business model to achieve a certain set of objectives. Whether it's a consortium, a legal entity, or a federation legal entity, or just a community working as part of a nonprofit, whatever.
So one of the interesting things about the collaboration with MEF is we really have the same problem. Both of our members are dealing with not only IoT devices, but a unique type of IoT device. This is an IoT device that moves around, right? So it's not only identity that's important. Identity is kind of the foundation for everything in a business federation, but our devices are moving around, and so we need to combine identity with ubiety. Ubiety is an unusual word. What it means is a specific place in space and time, and having a trusted ubiety and trusted identity are the two components for your members, right, who have IoT devices and cell phones and so on today, and our members who have cars that are increasingly connected with vehicle telematics and increasingly have massive amounts of data that they're using in local edge networks, in keeping in the vehicle, and also, when appropriate, exporting to the cloud. Or even to a chain where the data is really important and the provenance is critical. Let me give some examples of things that we think are particularly important and salient use cases, big impact. So if you can combine location and identity, you can create a trusted trip. If you can create a trusted trip, you can pay as you go for everything mobility, which means you can pay for roads as you go. Road usage charging is a huge problem and an area of interest for public agencies. There's $27 trillion of road infrastructure globally. It suffers from what economists call the tragedy of the commons, the fact that if you can't marginal price for something, the marginal cost is zero, people tend to overuse it. So you get congestion, you get pollution, you get all these other problems of the commons. You also have the problem of the one way of charging for, the imperfect charging for road infrastructure today is the gas tax. With electric vehicles, the gas tax goes away. That road infrastructure, nobody knows how to fund it. And so being able to marginal cost price for it is important. You have and it's a source of funding for roads. It's a way of managing demand within the infrastructure network. So lots of things can be done with marginal cost pricing for roads. Congestion pricing, another thing, right? A way of influencing behavior with that marginal cost pricing. Tailpipe emissions. Everybody wants to decarbonize. And mobility is one of the biggest and sometimes the biggest contributor to global warming and carbon emissions. But there's no way to measure it at the tailpipe. There's no way to measure it. There's no way to influence behavior directly. If you can link location with the identity vehicle, okay, now I know where it's traveling. I know what type of vehicle it is, what type of engine it has, its weight, its emissions. I can charge for the tailpipe emissions at the source. Now I can influence behavior, right? All of that can feed in to a trusted carbon credits, carbon trading scheme. So you can actually have really big impacts by combining this ubiety and identity. And that's just two examples of many. Those were kind of both public sector, social good examples.
And so, Chris, what we have is essentially an IoT device, a very complex IoT device being a car that's accessing applications across, on a global basis, cloud-based applications. They could be located anywhere. They're conducting commerce with a range of suppliers, right? And if you were to dissect that use case and look at where MEF plays, you would see that the work that we've done will underpin quite a number of these different requirements, whether it's the connectivity to the car with standardized connectivity. We're looking at the work that we're doing in the 5G space, the APIs to conduct the commerce between the car and the application, the connectivity, the automation framework, and all of the parts that go through that between the suppliers to the cloud providers and so on. And I would encourage the listeners here, the viewers, to go to the MEF website and look at the proof of concept showcases that are available on demand, because we have about 7 use cases that are delivering against a different 7 proof of concepts that are showing how these end-to-end solutions are created against a different set of use cases. But they're all similar in terms of the complexity and the requirements, right? And many of them do a good job of showing all of the different MEF works that are underpinning an end-to-end solution. We're not doing it alone for sure. There's many players in the game, but the impact that we're having now, as compared to where we were as an organization 3 or 4 years ago, is vastly different.
Yeah, it's really great points there. I really think the sort of pay-as-you-go nature is quite an apt one that you mentioned there, Chris. Certainly new ways to sort of manage demand, but also your assets for within your network. So interesting. We'll hear from Paul Gamp afterwards as well, talking about Console Connect and how they're all sort of doing their on-demand internet and managing in a sort of on their platform, for example. But likewise, what Kevin's just rightly pointed out there, and that's the purpose of the Infinite Edge series, right? Which is built upon the Federation of Trusted and Interconnected Partners to sort of see how, the complex service supply chains and the different base services and standards and APIs can, be evolved and forged, and for us to be able to, utilize and really step forwards and take advantage of everything. We didn't have much more time to talk about many other things and areas. Certainly security being a huge one, with SASE in particular, certainly with the connected cars, and that was something that I know Chris and Kevin spoke about prior to today's session, about how important that is from a hacking point of view. It's no longer, it's certainly from a safety point of view, someone can easily, well, not easily, but if unencrypted and the processes and things are not in place properly, could be subject to medium or very high severe breaches. So, huge areas of conversations, but I'm sure that you'll be discovering a lot more with the rest of the MEF Infinite Edge series. But with that, I'd just like to say thank you for myself and also for Kevin and Chris to join us today, just to give us a bit more of an insight, especially in terms of how MEF and Moby are seeing federations and the importance of alliances.
Great, Jason. Chris, thank you.
Thanks for making me a part of it. Looking forward to the collaboration.
Nicely done, gentlemen. Thanks for laying a solid foundation for our discussion on the collaboration and the federation imperative for today's digital landscape. If you've got questions or comments for Kevin, Jason, or Chris, be sure to use the chat feature to your right. We want this episode to be interactive, so please feel free to keep the conversation going. They would love to hear from you. Now, it's time to resume course with a very special keynote from Paul Gamp, CTO, PCCW Global, our MEF Infinite Edge Diamond sponsor. To add to our conversation today, we join Paul's presentation on automation and agile drive transformation. But first, a message from our sponsor.
The world of business has changed, so we've changed everything with software-defined interconnection, reduced complexity, improved performance, greater flexibility, lower connectivity costs, putting you in complete control. Console Connect takes your business through the multi-cloud online world with ease. all with a simple-to-use platform that makes this feel like this. Connect anything directly to anything or everything in ways and to places you've never been able to before. Gain access to one of the world's most advanced, robust global networks. An extensive private network that we own and manage. That means low latency, resilience, scalability, and pure performance. It means connecting with us is effortless and fast, predictable and secure. It's self-provisioning, automated, spin-up connections and flex bandwidth on demand, and only pay for what you use. All this within a global community that shares, collaborates, and grows together. Take control, cut complexity, make interconnecting effortless with Console Connect.
Hello, everybody. My name is Paul Gamp. I'm the Chief Technology Officer for PCCW Global. It's great to be here today, and I'm really excited to talk about the digital transformation journey we're having here at PCCW Global, and importantly, the Console Connect platform that was acquired by PCCW Global just over 3 years ago. So the reason MEF plays such an important role in the evolution of our digital platform is because what we are encountering is the need for international carriers to provide connectivity beyond the reach of their physical networks as we begin to offer on-demand services to our customers that are operating outside their traditional domain. So what is it that our enterprise customers are asking for? Our enterprise customers are asking for the ability to do traditional forms of connectivity, connecting one data center to another data center, connecting a branch office to a head office, work that the international telecommunications industry has been doing for at least 20 years. But now what we're seeing the enterprise customers want to do is connect to anybody on a platform, whether it be a supply chain partner, an upstream partner, a downstream partner, an east-west partner. They want to be able to connect to SaaS applications, to ERPs that are hosted in the cloud. They want to have this ubiquity of connectivity, and they want it to be done privately and securely as they have done with traditional MPLS networks. We see a substantial amount of workloads now moving to the cloud, whether that be AWS, Azure, Google, Alibaba, Tencent, Oracle, Salesforce, and others. How do we provide that connectivity to the enterprise? And how do we provide connectivity to the general internet, the traditional connectivity services that we provided in the past? So a lot of the reason that we need to establish a relationship with the evolution of MEF standards is because we're being presented with this problem, because our customers are now asking us to deliver these sorts of services on demand, and we need to find ways to deliver them. And in many cases, the connectivity that they require is beyond the reach of the network that we're operating. But importantly, our journey began not with a technology evolution, not with the evolution of a digital platform, but with the evolution of PCCW Global as an organization. Back in 2018, shortly after the acquisition of Console Connect by PCCW Global, we realized that to be able to be part of the journey of digital transformation for our enterprise customers, we needed to embrace a digital transformation ourselves. And in the middle of 2018, as a senior management team, we made a collective decision to adopt the Scaled Agile framework to help guide that transformation. It began with the data and IoT team. We identified the way that we deliver value to organizations. We identified all of our colleagues that are associated with the way we deliver value. And we then identified the systems that are supporting those operational value stream. Once we'd identified those systems, we then identified all of the development community that supported those systems, and we formed them into teams of agile teams. We began in 2018 with the launch of our data and IoT, what we refer to as an agile release train or a team of agile teams, followed shortly after by corporate services, our traditional BSS, OSS organization that support those systems. And we then extended beyond that into other applications that we develop around mobility and voice. We identified our colleagues throughout Europe that develop systems associated with our mobility and voice business. And then we extended that even further and into our support organization, our delivery and support. Throughout the course of 2018 and 2019, we identified each of these agile release trains and we launched them and we educated them and trained them in agile ways of working. The implementation that I've just described here is following the Scaled Agile Framework implementation roadmap. And I really want to highlight that the ability for us to deliver digital services on demand to our customer base was predicated by our ability to identify and launch these agile release trains. It was really a core part of this transformation to deliver value to our enterprise customers that are undergoing a transformation. We needed to undergo this transformation ourselves. It's enabled us to do many things, particularly to begin to focus and operate like an agile organization and to understand what sort of challenges our customers are facing in their agile transformation. As they begin to move workloads to the cloud, so has PCCW Global. As we've begun to deliver, as our enterprise users have begun to deliver value to their customers via their supply chain and via their partnerships, so too has Console Connect by PCCW Global played an important part of our evolution in establishing that agile mindset in the organization. So how are we solving the problem? We're solving the problem through the MEF Lifecycle Orchestration Sonata interface, part of the MEF-55 interface reference points implementation. Sonata's played a really strategic role for PCCW Global because it is that business-to-business interface reference point. It manages the service, the operation, the commercial interactions between two network providers. The reason that's important to us, despite the reach of the PCCW Global network, there are often endpoints or last miles that our enterprise customers want to get to that are not part of our network. Therefore, we need to have these relationships with third-party providers. And traditionally, as an industry, we would have built these network-to-network interfaces through manual managed services. We would establish these NNIs, and we would manually provision services, coordinating for the different VLANs that we would hand off customers to. The reason that the Sonata interface is so important to us is that the customer demand is no longer for a fixed-term 12-month contract. It's now for 2 to 3 days. They may want to have an ability to connect from Singapore to Dubai. They may want to have the ability to connect from Sydney to the Google Cloud Platform in London for 24 hours. And sometimes that demand from our customer base requires us to coordinate with our third-party providers. And we need to move that from a manual email, phone call conversation around provisioning into a fully integrated API. And so shortly after I joined PCCW Global, I took the opportunity to investigate all of the various standards organizations associated with the telecommunications industry. And MEF really stood out as that not-for-profit industry leader, establishing a network of cloud and technology providers who develop and certify API standards which empower this enterprise digital transformation. So MEF has been really strategic for us in terms of establishing a strategy for us around our APIs that we deliver to our customers, but most importantly to the API strategy that we develop with our partners. So what have we been able to achieve? And thankfully, through the award ceremonies and the ability to structure proof of concept demonstrations with a partnership with a number of other carriers, including Colt Technology Services, Sparkle, Tata Communications, Acedian, Armadis, and Clear Blockchain Technologies, we've been able to prove this hypothesis that the Sonata API and the reference implementation is able to deliver the true end-to-end scenario that we just described. So yeah, we made an award-winning MEF-3 proof of concept demonstration that was recognized in 2019, where we were able to achieve exactly that. So from a UNI, from a customer endpoint, we were able to connect through the Tata network, through the Sparkle network, and onwards into PCCW Global or into Colt. I think the key thing here is that where we saw MEF adding value to us was as a body that we're able to establish a collaborative community of fellow telecommunications providers that had a reference architecture that we all agreed and aligned to, and that delivered a technical outcome that we were then able to prove the hypothesis that this API was able to achieve the outcome that our enterprise customers were bringing to us. So this dynamic connectivity was really important in terms of me having assurance that we were on the right track with our relationship with MEF. And that east-west connectivity, where we were able to deliver to the enterprise connection from one location through a partner onto another location that was off-net for us, was really strategic in terms of a strategy of how we're going to provide this high-speed underlay. Because I think from the enterprise perspective, they're not really focused on what the individual carrier relationships are. They see this private connectivity as a high-speed underlay that they need to orchestrate, just as they orchestrate virtual machine infrastructure in a public cloud. The key thing for me, however, was acknowledging that we were at the beginning of a transformation in the way that connectivity services were developed. And the reason that that transformation is so strategic is because as we completed this proof of concept in 2019, one of the things that we realized is if connectivity implementation was going to occur, and not just at an annual boundary or perhaps a monthly boundary, but that we were going to see connectivity being delivered on an hourly basis, perhaps even down to the minute or the second, what does that mean for knock-on effects? So we can imagine the configure, price, quote, provision, and service automation lifecycle as being something that we can deliver via an API, and that timeline looks realistic and achievable from a technical perspective. But what this proof of concept really highlighted for us was that that's not sufficient. It's going to create a commercial impact. So if we're delivering a service on an hourly basis or even down to a per second basis, as an industry, how are we going to settle for that? And importantly, not just settle with our end enterprise customer, but settle with the partners who may be part of that value chain. In the instance that we demonstrated here, when we went from Tata to Sparkle to PCCW Global, that's a tripartite relationship with an end user. How are we going to effectively settle for each of our networks contributing part of the value of that connectivity solution? So that's really where we understood that there needed to be some form of technology associated with the commercial enablement. And MEF played a really strategic role for us in identifying the technical attributes of the EVC, what are the parameters of the connection that we deliver for this private, secure underlay. But it also gave us a forum to talk about how we're going to settle for this commercially. And once you have a tri-party relationship, the natural evolution at this point, certainly from my perspective and with Sparkle and Tata and Colt, was to begin to look at other alternatives around settlement and automation. And so part of the proof of concept that we demonstrated was with not just the technical dynamic connectivity, but also in the commercial enablement. And at that point, we adopted blockchain, so a distributed ledger technology, and using Clear as our blockchain technology provider, we were able to demonstrate in this particular proof of concept that distributed ledger technology was the key to enabling the commercial attributes and the commercial settlement. And it's very heartening to see that MEF is beginning to do research into the area that we can see around blockchain and settlement. One of the things that we've learned is that since this proof of concept in 2019, we also worked with another partner where we were able to enable full lifecycle management. So the actual service that we delivered was instantiated as a smart contract on a blockchain, and the service start, the service delivery, and the service end were all attributes that we were able to instantiate on a blockchain and then go through all the way through to settlement on that transaction. So this ability for MEF to provide a forum where we could conduct a proof of concept, find a community of peers, coalesce around a strategy for implementation, and then demonstrate and prove the hypothesis has proven to be very strategic for us. And in 2020, we continued on that vision. So much so that one of the, as I mentioned earlier on about the importance of this agile transformation internally, we instantiated at the beginning of 2020 a dedicated agile release train purely focusing on this blockchain investment at PCCW Global. And that's where we continue to invest in our partnership. So what are some of the lessons that we've learned as we've gone through this process? we've learned that the APIs to automate existing inter-service provider processes are nice to have. Automating the existing configure price quote process certainly delivered lots of efficiencies. And we see that in our relationship with other carriers as we've continued to look at different proof of concepts and different opportunities to instantiate or tokenize assets. Service records, for example. We have a partnership underway with another carrier where we're tokenizing a service attribute and putting it on a blockchain and managing this part of the lifecycle, the configuration price and quote part of the lifecycle. And so that's great. We're definitely getting operational efficiencies, our data integrity is improving, and we can see the benefits of the tokenization of a service asset. But what it didn't do was deliver us innovation. And that's really important because taking a legacy process and automating it doesn't really map to the way that the enterprise is experiencing its digital transformation. As the enterprise move mission-critical workloads to the cloud, and as they discover that the public internet, where you have limited to no control over the path from source to destination, and you have limited to no ability to manage the quality of service of that connection, this is how the enterprise are discovering the demand for private connectivity, where you have the ability to control path from source to destination, and you have the ability to control quality of service, to allocate fixed bandwidth and fixed quality of service to that connectivity from the headquarters to a private application hosted in a public cloud. So that is where innovation's occurring. And the APIs that automate new inter-service provider processes are the must-have. So really, that's what we learned as we went through these proof of concepts, focusing not just on the automation of existing processes, but automation on new services. So APIs that automate these new services have a very different profile when you begin to think of the use case you're trying to solve for the enterprise, as opposed to the solving the existing use case of the way we've delivered value in the past. So attributes around on-demand. So the goal for the enterprise is provisioning. The goal for the enterprise is not quoting, it's not pricing. They just want to have that connectivity to that virtual private cloud for 24 hours, and they want it now. And they want to implement it in a script. They want to be able to call an API and endpoint at a service provider and say, I want connectivity from Sydney to Singapore for 24 hours, and I want 500 megabits of bandwidth allocated to my VPC in AWS, and I want 1 gig allocated to my VPC in Google in Taiwan. So they're thinking about it in terms of use cases that they're trying to solve, and all of it's around on-demand connectivity. At times, certainly what we've experienced is these network as a service platforms, or as we prefer to call it at Console Connect by PCCW Global, these software-defined interconnection platforms are at times evolving faster than the standards. And that's certainly happened in other industries in the past, and that's not surprising. I think that's a good thing. But the important role that MEF plays here is being able to take these fields of innovation, whether it's the Console Connect platform or other software-defined interconnection platforms, but bring them together in terms of what have these partnership communities learned, and how are we going to bring that learning together into a standard that we can all coalesce around. Finally, in order to automate managed data services, we need to adopt standards that have both a standardized data model, but importantly, a standardized information model and a processing around it. So that's what we've learned, is that these automation around new inter-service provider processes are the must-have as opposed to the nice-to-have. And finally, as I mentioned earlier, automation of commercial is just as important as automation of service delivery. And we think that the adoption of distributed ledger is a natural extension. We see here already, not just through proof of concept that we did in 2019, but in terms of production deployments that we're focused on in 2021, that there's a substantial amount of value in the inter-service provider capability by focusing on this distributed ledger technology to maintain state and awareness of services as we tokenize them and put them onto a distributed ledger. So in the future, I see that for the enterprise and for service providers, that the cost of this technology adoption could become quite substantial. if as a chief technology officer of an international telecommunications provider, or as a technology company that we call ourselves today, if I need to adopt a different API interface to integrate with my partners in Europe, then I need to adopt a different API standard to integrate with my partners in North America. How am I going to provide a consistent user experience for my customers? So the ability to adopt and coalesce around a standard become very critical to me from a cost perspective. I need to ensure a unified experience for my customers, irrespective of where they are globally. And one of the ways I can do that is by having a standards organization such as MEF play a critical role in coordinating a global community of service providers around a single standard. And we've certainly found that the development and evolution of Sonata has been key for that. And so the cost benefits of being engaged with MEF is strategic because it lowers the cost of me as an organization to integrate with my peers, and that improves the quality of service that I can offer to my users. So I certainly see at some point in the future we're going to see some federation, and that maybe there's a role for an organization to play in the federation of APIs as we focus on the cost reduction, because the connectivity services that we provide is only one of many. What if we were able to have a standardized interface around this lifecycle orchestration that wasn't just a data service? Perhaps there's an opportunity to have a federation of API services where the service attributes are somewhat agnostic, and we can use something like the lifecycle orchestration reference to automate not just data services, but perhaps voice services or perhaps mobile roaming. Where I'm really excited is what we see the enterprise discovering these software-defined interconnection platforms is because they're evaluating the movement of a mission-critical workload into a public cloud, whether that be through an agile transformation that they're doing internally, or whether it be through simple economics that they want to lower their cost of operations. They discover these software-defined interconnection platforms because they want to understand, if I move a workload to a public cloud, can I connect to it privately? And often what that may mean is we've achieved that the point of presence. So they've found a software-defined interconnection provider, and they're now really just looking to provision virtual machine infrastructure. So I think there's a real opportunity for us as an industry to begin to play a more strategic role in the digital transformation of the enterprise. We've been very focused and successful around lifecycle orchestration for data services. I think if we step back for a moment and see this as a fabric of API federation for the enterprise, then maybe there's a role for us to play in the automation of virtual machine infrastructure or container infrastructure. Maybe we can be the entry point for the enterprise on that transformation journey, and that they could choose to use a MEF API to launch a virtual machine at the same time that they've chosen to launch private connectivity to that virtual machine. So I think there's a real strategic opportunity for MEF, and I'm excited to continue on that journey with MEF and with the partners that I have in that community. It's been wonderful to have an opportunity to speak with you today. In summary, I think the key thing that I'd like to share with everyone is that this transformation journey at PCCW Global began with us as an organization learning agile ways of working. And that agile way of working was as strategic to the organization and our ability to deliver value to our customers as any of the technical decisions that we made. And it's really important that I have that opportunity to express how critical the agile transformation has been at PCCW Global to ensure that we're able to assist other organizations as they go through their digital and agile transformation. The problem that we've been trying to solve for the enterprise is that they don't really see the services that we provide as independent. They see this large-scale fabric of connectivity that's critical to their ability to achieve their transformation goals, and that the MEF Sonata lifecycle orchestration body of work has allowed us to play a role in that connectivity transformation inside the enterprise. In 2019, the ability to demonstrate and prove that hypothesis was key to our decision-making. Working with Tata and Sparkle and Colt gave us the confidence that we had the right API specification in place. And some of the lessons that we've learned is really to focus on the transformation journey in terms of must-have, which is this on-demand connectivity to mission-critical applications, whether they be in a public cloud, whether they be delivered by a SaaS provider, and really beginning to focus on delivering a platform of connectivity between applications and infrastructure for our user base. We don't know today whether a user is going to become a consumer or a supplier of our service as we move to a platform economic model. And finally, the fact that distributed ledger, the opportunity that MEF afforded us to prove out that hypothesis, has been really strategic as we focus now on production deployments of distributed ledger between many of our partners. It's been wonderful to have the opportunity to share our journey with you, and thank you for the opportunity.
A big thanks to Paul and PCCW Global, one of our first MEF 3.0 certified providers, for sharing insights on automation and agility for digital transformation. Onward to our next destination, where MEF Vice President of Strategic Programs, Daniel Barlev, explains how MEF's work in defining LSO APIs and smart bilaterals is enabling digital service providers to transact with a wide range of partners to create high-value, complex digital products in real time. Computer, on screen.
Hello, welcome to the latest episode of MEF Perspectives, part of the Infinite Edge series. Today I'm going to be talking about what MEF is doing in the area of federations and supply chains for digital products. Digital products, the combination of compute, connectivity, and storage, are a central element in the connected economy. They are becoming increasingly mission critical for a lot of enterprises, and they're becoming more and more complex. And finally, they're becoming shorter and shorter in duration as complex digital products get created and then removed and replaced with another digital product which the customer needs. And this is having a major impact on the service provider industry and opportunities. And so for these digital products that don't last very long necessarily, have a short duration of their lifetime, but are complex, it's very, very important to automate the whole business life cycle around these digital products, because if it takes a long time to create a digital product, then it becomes irrelevant for the enterprise end customer. And also, if the overhead involved in the business life cycle, the administration, things like quoting, prices, ordering, billing and settlement, and so on, if they're onerous for a small duration service or product, it becomes unworthwhile. So in order to scale the digital product economy, so to speak, it's very important to automate and enable the rapid streamlining of the business lifecycle for digital products. So what examples are there of digital products? Well, there are many, many, many examples, and I've just listed three here. The first one is SASE managed services. So MEF right now is defining SASE managed services, which enterprises will be ordering from their service provider, managed SASE services, which are essentially a combination of security functions, connectivity, and policy. And that combination is exactly what we would envisage for a digital product. So the ability to check what is available from the service provider in terms of a SASE managed service, and then perhaps even more importantly, to price it, to quote it, the price for it, and to deliver it, requires automation. So of the business life cycle. So that's one example of a digital product. Another example is that of the telco edge and edge AI services on the telco edge, something that we covered quite extensively in our recent MEF 3.0 POC showcase. And edge AI services, again, require the ability of service providers to pull together in real time complex products that rely not only on what's in their own inventory, but also what is available from their partners in order to complete the digital product. In this case, perhaps an edge AI service. So if we can imagine an enterprise with, for example, a national or global presence, their service provider that's offering the edge AI service for all their locations throughout the country or the globe will need to be able to order things like compute in edges close to all the locations throughout the world, and typically that will be out of their footprint. And these are the sort of things that will not be ordered over the internet. So the business lifecycle has to be secure, and it has to be fast, and it has to be scalable. And the third example of digital product leads on from what we were hearing from the panel earlier with Kevin Vachon and Chris Ballinger from MEF and Moby, and Jason from Capacity, who were explaining how there's an emerging market for connected vehicles or mobility, where the compute is actually going to reside on the mobile edge or the vehicle edge. And again, the service providers that will play in this area will be deploying capabilities both within their own network and their own telco edge, but also outside of it. And that requires a streamlined business approach to the whole business lifecycle. So what are the key elements in this environment of streamlined business life cycles? As we see it emerging in the market today, the three key elements that I want to touch on today, and were touched on earlier in the panel discussion or the executive discussion, are the federations, supply chains, and identity management. So let me talk a little bit more about that. Federations have not been defined yet, and that was touched upon earlier. Everybody has their own take on what a federation is. So in MEF, we've actually tentatively started proposing standardized definitions of what we call federations for digital products. And these federations are essentially groups of actors, commercial business actors, buyers and sellers, companies effectively. Maybe service providers, they may be enterprises, they may be other agencies in the economy, and these federations essentially are defined by the trust that's assigned to them by a governing authority or a reputable industry authority, so that those entities or actors within the federation that are buying and selling from each other will use identity and rely on trust and reputation within that federation in order to do business. So we think of federations in our emerging definition as long-term groups of actors, buyers and sellers that are transacting with one another in a streamlined way for digital products. Now, if we look at supply chains are the analogy or analogous rather of the physical world. We're very, very familiar with supply chains for physical products, complex products that are manufactured with smaller parts, which in turn are manufactured with parts from other partners, which in turn are supplied, raw materials. Supply chains, global supply chains, have been very much a part of our lexicon for many years. Well, now we're going to see complex supply chains also for digital products, because at any given time for a particular customer that needs a particular digital product, not all of the product elements that are required in order to build that digital product will be available from a single actor or entity in a federation, and they may well need to, they typically will need to purchase that in real time from their partners, who in turn may have to order them from their partners. So the life cycle essentially is pre-order, order, post-order, and this let's call it a domino effect, as one entity or one actor needs to complete their offering to their upstream buyer, will go downstream perhaps to buy from their partners. So these supply chains only come into effect with the delivery of a digital product for a specific customer with a specific lifetime, and they are created and torn down according to the needs of that specific digital product. So we see supply chains in MEF as being temporary, but underpinned by federations and the trust and reputation that go with them, but they need to be automated. And the automation of the transactions and the business between each neighboring entity in the supply chain is critically important. So what is MEF doing in this area? MEF has been for a number of years defining LSO APIs. I'll spell that out. LSO is Lifecycle Service Orchestration, and APIs are the software based interfaces between actors, buyers and sellers, for example, or any machine-to-machine interface that's required for software to work and transfer information between the two entities. The LSO APIs have been defined, standardized, open standardized APIs have been defined for two areas, what we call in our reference architecture LSO Sonata and LSO Cantata, have been defined for things like address qualification or address validation, product offering qualification, site serviceability, quote, order, inventory. And we're extending that now to trouble ticketing and product catalog and billing and settlement. So we have been developing in MEF, and we continue to do so under the framework, the umbrella of LSO APIs, very, very important APIs for these areas of the business lifecycle. And by enabling these or providing these APIs to the industry and actors or buyers and sellers in the industry, like service providers, implementing those LSO APIs, they are able to essentially transact in an automated, instantaneous way. And our first release of the LSO APIs was back in 2017. And since then, we've been building up the program, the framework, and our first named release was in December of 2020, Aretha. And we've just published our most recent release, Billy, in May of 2021, and the next one will be Celine. So Celine and Billy and Aretha essentially contain all that is required by buying and selling entities to standardize effectively between them these pre-order, order, and post-order elements of the business life cycle to essentially automate the whole life cycle. We've gone further than LSO Sonata and LSO Cantata, and we have introduced work on what we call smart bilaterals. So we now have a draft standard out. It's the industry's first for DLT based interaction between buyers and sellers, and that's called MEF 114 draft standard release 1. And that shows how buyers and sellers using LSO APIs in combination with smart contracts can actually synchronize all of their business interactions to ensure immediate and automated elements of the business lifecycle beyond the LSO APIs for things like billing, ordering, billing, and settlement. So that's very important work that's been going on there. And beyond that, we are now working in collaboration with Moby on the ability, essentially, to enable automation of buying and selling of digital products, not only within an ecosystem or within a federation, for example, of telecoms, but also between different federations or ecosystems. So we now are working together with Moby in close collaboration to show and enable telecoms from the MEF ecosystem and the telecom industry to buy and sell and create new revenue with partners in a completely different ecosystem in the mobility or Moby ecosystem for example, connected vehicles. And that relies very much on the standardization work that we're doing. And another group, another project in MEF now, that is defining how do we recognize each other's identities? And this is based in large part on the work of C-band and the core services that they defined in C-band by using the same identity mechanism then different federations using that identity management mechanism will be able to transact with one another, even though identities have been issued by different federations. And that brings us back to that definition of what the DNA of federation is. It's the identity that's issued by the governance authority behind the federation, for example, MEF, or for example, Moby, and perhaps in the future C-band, which by recognizing each other's identities that have been issued to their federation members to be able to create transactions over the MEF standardized smart bilaterals with LSO APIs. So on that note, I will stop here and thank you for joining us today on MEF Perspectives. For those that are already MEF members, we urge you to join us in our projects related to federations and supply chains and identity management, influence, implement, and innovate. And for those that are not MEF members, well, we urge you either to join our work in MEF or to partner with other ecosystems and to adopt the standardized approach that we are driving in MEF. So thank you very much indeed for joining us today. Bye-bye.
The internet is awesome, but what happens when your applications stall? That's why service providers built private, high-speed networks. The pinnacle of these networks uses MEF 3.0 standardized underlay connectivity services. Carrier Ethernet services alone are now a $60+ billion market, along with MEF 3.0 optical transport and IP services. Providers have technology-agnostic services with great flexibility. We know not all businesses live on a single network. Providers must interconnect. MEF 3.0 services make that easier. Yet enterprises also need dynamic, responsive services with frictionless inter-provider connectivity. MEF LSO APIs address this need, enabling providers to automate and orchestrate both on-net and off-net. What about mission-critical apps? These apps require flexible, application-centric, policy-driven network services that leverage smart underlay connectivity services like Carrier Ethernet. This is the role of MEF 3.0 SD-WAN services, an overlay service that delivers the policy-based, application-centric solution enterprises need while enabling providers to deliver additional value-added digital services like security, mixed reality, and Internet of Things. Operating transparently over MEF underlay services, even over broadband internet, MEF 3.0 SD-WAN services use our LSO APIs to harmoniously automate and orchestrate overlay plus underlay, both within and between providers. This is the story of underlays and overlays and how digital enterprises become free to grow. This is the story of MEF 3.0.
Great stuff. Thanks, Daniel, for providing an overview of MEF's work in defining LSO APIs and smart bilateral so that federated telecoms can create high-value, complex digital products for their customers at light speed. A lot of great content so far, and a perfect time to take a 3-minute break, refuel the enterprise, and meet right back here for the Analyst Corner and our 2 deep dive discussions of the day, where we examine evolving infrastructures and standardization for intercarrier automation. Now, where did I put those dilithium crystals? Oh, the transporter room. Energize.
Enterprises have increasingly complex connectivity and security requirements for their digital transformation journey. They cannot wait months to turn up new services from their providers. They need them right away and around the globe. Adding to the complexity, no single company can provide all services from their own inventory, so they must work with a set of partners. Their inter-provider commercial and business transactions, like ordering and billing, are mostly manual, error-prone, and take weeks for service delivery. So how do digital service providers create a frictionless experience and turn up new high-value digital services in seconds, not months? MEF-LSO, or Lifecycle Service Orchestration, APIs, offer a standardized way to enable end-to-end automation and orchestration of digital services across multiple providers and direct to the enterprise. By automating functions like quoting, ordering, inventory, and billing, both service providers and the enterprise can realize a faster path to services. Starting with MEF 3.0 carrier Ethernet services, and eventually for other services such as Internet Access, SD-WAN, and SASE, MEF's Sonata APIs drive frictionless inter-provider business and commercial interactions. The result? Faster service delivery for off-net subscriber locations. MEF's LSO Cantata APIs address the enterprise customer-to-business layer of interactions, like ordering and inventory, with the service provider. When combined with Sonata, Cantata APIs provide full end-to-end service automation across multiple providers in a supply chain.
To drive that scale, one needs automation, and orchestration is really the key that drives automation for these services to be delivered across different networks.
Interconnect, automate, operate, accelerate, because those are the keys. If we're able to interconnect using guidelines that MEF has put forward, but if we're able to automate, we'll be able to operate in a much more accelerated fashion.
Find out how MEF LSO commercial and business APIs can help your organization monetize digital services revenue faster at mef.net/MEF-APIS.
Welcome back to MEF Infinite Edge. If you're just tuning in today, we're focusing on the growing necessity of collaboration and federations for enterprise digital transformation and the role MEF is playing in enabling a global federation of network, cloud, and technology providers. So far, we've explored this space from a few different vantage points. An executive panel on the evolution of alliances, a keynote on automation and agile drive transformation, and tying it all together, an overview of MEF's work. And because I'm a Trekkie, we're also having some fun and making some comparisons to the Star Trek series, which is why we are shifting to Warp Speed Factor 5 with market insights from highly regarded analysts Rosemary Cochran from Vertical Systems Group and Rick Talbot, ACG Research. I'm pretty sure they won't hold back, but just in case, set phasers to stun, shields up, resume course.
Hi, I'm Rick Talbot, Principal Analyst with ACG Research, and we have with us today Rosemary Cochran, who is Principal and Co-Founder of Vertical Systems Group. Welcome.
Thank you, Rick. Nice to be here.
So we're talking about federated systems today and federated networks. The general concept, of course, is you have independent networks that are able to operate and some type of overarching set of rules for the road. But the concept of federated systems has been really, is very, very broad, with getting as broad as social systems or social networks and then computer networks. But we're really focusing on things more like what the MEF works with, and so it's more of a telecom type of approach to this. So let me start off with asking, what are the driving needs for federated networks and them focusing on digital transformation?
Right. Well, I think that's a great place to start. And I'd say the answer is really urgency. And the urgency is being driven by the COVID pandemic, unfortunately. And what we're seeing is that, if we talk about digital transformation, it really means change. And many of us resist change, put it off. If things don't happen, you really typically need some kind of catalyst to make a change, if like service functionality or doesn't work or an application isn't there. But what we're seeing this past year is that COVID has become a mega catalyst for advancing digital transformation. And this has been underscored by the research we do on an ongoing basis, looking at top business challenges for service providers worldwide. And at the beginning of 2020, the markets were great, and it was pre-pandemic. SD-WAN was very hot, and a lot of the challenges had to do with tuning service platforms and onboarding new customers. But by the middle of 2020, as we all know, the pandemic was just disrupting everything worldwide. There were supply chain issues, a lot of things. And the number one challenge at that point, by far, cited by service providers, was that they wanted to help customers accelerate digital transformation projects that were either underway or planned. And part of that was also about security integration, because many of the workforce was shifting to home, which also caused a need for more secure, flexible, collaborative solutions. So it became very evident that businesses and enterprises that had a strong digital presence and cloud-based operations were really better prepared than those who hadn't. So the need for federations became important because some of the piece parts needed to be there. And as a result, the partnerships for collaboration became evident, and we saw a lot of deals being made, reseller deals, other agreements, acquisitions for things like security and edge devices and team collaboration and video, of course. So that then pivoted a little bit more at the beginning of this year, where the service providers told us they were just much more focused on transformations compelled by the new realities of operating through the pandemic. And the major goals were really continuing to help plan transformations and multi-cloud connectivity, along with more automation, particularly of service delivery and customer experience issues. So the urgency is real. There's definitely a need for federations that are focused on transformation, and the challenge is really just making it happen. So moving to the next step, then, Rick, how would you see that federated networks would facilitate this digital transformation?
It really goes back to can businesses provide for themselves an ecosystem that they need, or do all the businesses need to go to a single ecosystem for all of them? The concept of federated systems is that each one should be able to develop its own system and that suits its own needs. And of course, the federation is required in order to provide those rules of the road. How do we communicate between those? There's some very significant complexities in that, but the general concept is that we maximize the benefit for each individual enterprise by letting it have its own ecosystem. So that the example I'd use is that other ecosystems, others have tried to give us ecosystems that work for everyone. They don't say Microsoft Teams or Google, and we see that that just doesn't fit everyone's requirements. So it just goes back to this independence that we can have. So that being what we want, then are there components that we have to have in order to get that? You know, how do we do that?
Yeah, well, that's a great question because, as you say, not one entity cannot do all of the things that they want to do, although some tries, certainly. And so in order to form a federation, it's almost like I think of it as a startup, because they need to kind of come together with a mission. And the mission has to be, you know, what's the business case for service? What is the target market? What are the catalysts for adoption? For how is it going to work for migration from existing services? How will the services be priced, sold, supported? What about competition? All the things that basically go into a business case, but a mission for that federation. And then some of the partnership issues have to do with network ownership and asset values, quite frankly, is, you know, who is going to benefit from that, from the technology, and for the outcome. Other considerations might be investments from private sources or from government funded sources. And we're seeing a lot of that these days, and that may impact the mission going forward for any kind of federation. And then just team. The team, it makes a big difference, the people coming together, and all the partners within a federation really need to buy into the mission about what they're trying to achieve. If everyone's not on the same page, then those things don't work. And then connectivity makes sense for fiber backbone, access capacity, and security, of course, where, as I say, somehow administer security everywhere. And the bottom line is, if you put all that together, a lot of moving parts and forming a federation, it's again like a startup, and like startups, there are many potential ways that has outcomes. So that's a very broad framework for delivering services with federated involvement. But let's look at, again, back to what the networks are going to do. Rick, do you think federated networks also facilitate the expansion of capacity as these services put additional traffic on the network?
Well, yes, that's an important item that we have, is that the federated networks are going to depend on the capacity being underneath them so that they can operate. And happily, the industry is moving towards, and this is the network itself, the network infrastructure is moving in a direction that would enable this software driving of the different functions and virtualization functions that we have. So this is a general direction which actually is a little bit analogous to the federated systems, and that is that we have what we would call domains, where the set of rules pertain to different parts of the network, and then you have to have orchestration between the domains. There's an understanding that different parts of the network are going to operate somewhat differently. Many times it's because there are different vendors in the different portions, though we have some pretty good interoperability, particularly at the higher layers between, let's say, routers. I mean, we don't have issues of, well, you know, I've got to buy router A because I have other routers of router A, and they won't talk if we've got router A and router B. I wish I could say that was the case down at the transport layer. That's not the case at the transport layer. So we really do need some type of control or orchestration between those. So yes, that's the way that we're handling it there. So so I understand that really we've got some industry gatherings that are helping move us towards federation and towards the digitalization. Can you give us, shed a little light on what's going on there?
Yes, I think that's certainly been very successful with forums, associations. They're calling different things, but basically, the first benefit is bringing together a broad range of companies that would potentially be part of the federations working on digital transformation, and the members or the participants really contribute by helping to develop and share and socialize industry standards and definitions and specs. And notably, I think over the years, MEF has been very proactive about encouraging input from both technical side and the business side, and given serious consideration as well to kind of real world implementations and monetization. And the reason I think specifications are key is because you really need a common and clear understanding of what the collaboration is about. To that end, the use of APIs and service orchestration, like you mentioned, is the MEF LSO APIs and TM Forum suite of open APIs are helping to do that automation of manual processes and streamline transactions. Other forums and alliances are contributing as well, like the MOBI initiative, which is developing blockchain-based standards focused on secure exchange of data. And I think an important point is that industry standards like these, once they're implemented, that you're going to take care of the low-touch automation and maintenance of standard tasks, and it frees up the resources for the higher touch, higher value, more complex digital transformation projects. So that's definitely a benefit, as is the proof of concept efforts that are going on. An example is the MEF-LSO APIs being used for smart bilaterals and for distributed ledger technology that enables dynamic interprovider settlement. And then a final quick note is on certifications. And attainment of certification ensures compliance with standards, and it's also become a competitive differentiator for MEF certifications. And we've been tracking those certifications for a long time, and there definitely is a correlation between market share leaders and certification. So with all those resources helping accelerate digital transformations, how do the end users benefit? For instance, how would ordering from these federated networks work, Rick?
So what this enables us to do is move from where we have been, which is, you call up some business entity and tell them what you want, and then it takes some amount of time for them to put together orders and for that to be sent to all the different locations. The MEF has really helped us streamline that so that we could put up, for instance, Ethernet connections from end to end, even though there are multiple carriers involved in it. Now what we're doing, particularly as we go to federated systems, is move up the complexity and richness of the applications that we're doing. So let's say that someone wants some type of information, and that person knows that somewhere else they have it, and the billing on this type of service might be more complex than just simple carrier to carrier billing, and then one bills the customer. So you have this concept of being able to go to the first, maybe your local carrier, and say, I need this information, and then they're able to go across and put together the connection that you have so that you could pull this information. All the while, the billing components are being set up, and everything that is required for the service itself. So that's the direction that we're going with it, and what the federated systems would allow us to do, allow the end user to do. Yeah, I really appreciate the insights that you've had, Rosemary. This has been really interesting.
Yes, well,
thanks, and I hope.
Well, likewise, Rick. Thanks.
Yeah, so I hope y'all all have a good and safe day.
Rosemary and Rick, great job, and thanks for sharing your analysis. Deep Dive session number 1 is up next with Mirko Voltolini, Global Head of Network on Demand, Colt Technology Services, Frank Morales, Vice President of Connectivity, Orange Business Services, and Ari Banerjee, VP of Strategy, Netcracker. I'm joining them to talk about evolving infrastructures to create dynamic partner ecosystems that enable new platform B2B 2X business models. Mirko, Frank, Ari, beam me up. Wow, that is still so cool. I love it. Hey, and nice to see you all are here ready to go. So maybe before our questions also materialize in front of our own very eyes, let's take a moment to learn a touch more about yourselves and briefly what you do. Mirko, let's start with yourself, followed by Ari and then Frank.
Hi, John. Hi, everybody. So my name is Mirko Voltolini. I work at Colt Technology, and I'm responsible for strategy innovation. So looking into the future.
Hi, John. Hi, everybody. My name is Ari Banerjee. I'm the Senior Vice President of Strategy for Netcracker. again, my role is to look into the future and bring that into our solutions and products.
Hi everyone, hi John, Mirko, Ari, happy to be with you. I'm Frank Morales. I'm working within Orange Business Services, where I am VP for Connectivity Services, and I'm also have the honor to be a MEF Board Director.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here with us today. Frank, let's stay with yourself, if that's all right. Go with some questions. Frank, tell me, what are the major challenges and emerging trends faced by service providers today? What are you seeing?
John, okay, but maybe let's set the scene by having the customer in the room. And let me give you the opportunity to share what are, let's say, the most recent discussion we have had with our customers. First of all, we could say that SD-WAN is really and definitely the foundation of any architecture evolution for digital transformation of any companies. So that is quite a good news for all of us. But with the acceleration of digital transformation, we could see strong evolution elements. I would say 3 of them. With the experience of the crisis, the challenge is now for companies to move from running the business to changing the business somehow. And as an example, we have enabled thousands of employees to work from home during the pandemic with having any disruption. But now there's a mix of remote working, working from home, and working from offices. Companies are looking for more opportunity to create value, for example, for in the manufacturing activities, the ability to have experts managing remotely industrial machine by using augmented reality from anywhere in the world. That's a great opportunity for them. The second subject concerns the huge and important broad transformations that manager of infrastructure have to make at the same time. They have the cloud transformation, they have the edge computing transformation, they have the SASE transformation, they have the SD-WAN transformation, the working from home transformation. And they have to make all this, while being responsible of the existing environment with potential issues, of course, from legacy architecture. And to achieve that, successfully, they need to count on a reliable distributed platform ecosystem. And the third element they have to face, companies, is with the pandemic, now the link between the IT transformation and the business transformation is getting closer and closer, with a strong demand in terms of ROI. And so IT manager have to develop and roll out very rapidly new technologies because it corresponds to new business case. And so for us, as all our network technologies are now IT assets, we have to manage carefully and rapidly the release management in order to give them the new use case, the new capability to deploy new use cases.
Wow. So then if I was going to dig a little bit deeper on this, it is the deep dive. So when we talk about connectivity and ecosystem, what do you think is truly at stake today?
What is at stake today, we could see that the new design sticking to what we call all of us SASE, the Secured Access Service Edge, is really what is at stake today because it fits well with digital transformation needs. And in this model, we could see that traditional boundaries, internal versus external, where network security services are usually used, are distributed across the edge of the networks, close to the users, close to the objects, close to applications, instead of being centralized in a central or regional data center. And this design brings performance and flexibility for enterprise that are adopting a full cloud, internet first, industry 4.0, working from home models. And in this model, we could see three strong evolutions that could challenge traditional way of doing one for companies, for service providers, but as well for vendors. The first one being to be able to deliver the best performance, security, and flexibility, and the three at the same time, and not one at the expense of the others. The second one is an open platform architecture design where the overlay and the underlay are working separately, and where the underlay is fully based on internet. And the third one is the ability within this platform to deliver on-demand and security services to secure flows from users, wherever and whatever network they are connected from, to applications located in any IaaS or SaaS architecture.
All right, well, thanks for digging in, Frank. I really appreciate sharing all that. So, Mirko, I'm going to jump over to yourself for a moment, and maybe you could help me understand what's the role of service providers in this hyper-connected world, in particular, in respect to serving enterprise businesses. What is the role?
Yeah, I mean, Frank already touched upon it, but let me just elaborate on that. We're going through a major transformation in the business world, and this is driven by the adoption of a number of emerging technologies in the digital space. I'm talking about artificial intelligence, IoT, blockchain, augmented and virtual reality, and of course, the adoption of cloud. These technologies are not anymore just part of the IT backend in the enterprise space. They are now becoming an integral part of the business model of these enterprises, and often they're actually at the center of their new business model. As an example, think about the automotive industry, the car industry, where we connect the cars, autonomous vehicles, and all the multitude of different technologies that are part of this fundamental change in the industry. And so back to the question, the role of the service provider, the role of the network in this world is actually central. Unique connectivity to make this world working, unique connectivity to be able to transport the large amount of data that enable training of AI system, unique connectivity to collect data from the billions of IT sensors we already have deployed, and the more billions will be deployed over time, and unique connectivity to enable digital twin technology for AR and VR. You need a lot of capacity, so a lot of network capacity, low latency, a high reliable and dynamically controllable network.
Well, Mirko, continue on with the line of question about service providers. How can service providers really leverage the partnerships?
Yeah, so this is a very complex world. To glue everything together, this digital world, you need partners. No one can play alone, and service provider needs to form these close bonds with a multitude of different partners. Cloud providers, first of all, as we're talking about network and cloud, technology providers covering all the areas I mentioned, and of course between themselves to create a digital ecosystem. Integration is key. These technologies needs to be operated seamlessly to create these sophisticated capabilities that I described. You can look at it actually across the geography dimension and the service dimension. So you need to expand on both in terms of coverage, so globally as well as on the service stack. One of the elements here we need to consider is API and automation. This is one of the answers, one of the elements that we need to create this ecosystem of capabilities, and service provider needs to be able to interconnect between themselves and the rest of the ecosystem using these loosely coupled mechanisms that are reusable and scalable, so you don't need to recreate them all the time. And we embrace full automation, ditching the procedures that we currently have in place in terms of moving away from manual steps. This is where the work we've done within MEF to define the lifecycle service orchestration comes into play.
Thank you, Mirko. Thanks for sharing with us. Ari, I see you sitting over there with Netcracker. We did not forget about you, so here we go. Share with me, how keen are CSPs to broaden out their services beyond connectivity and security and bring in partner apps or services into their offering? And a further question, what is the criteria to make that successful?
Good question, John. I think when we look at our customers as well as the broader operator community, there is a huge interest for them. There's a demand, there's a willingness for them to bring much more services beyond just the connectivity services to the market. And to do that with a bigger partner ecosystem. Now, if you look at any of the industry research, we are seeing that with our customers, but if you look at with the industry research, even Gartner and others are looking at it the same way, there is a big demand. Now, one of the things we have seen is the operators' communities' interest in bringing more enterprise or B2B services as part of their services. I mean, Frank talked about, and Marco as well, SD-WAN and other services. These are very, very enterprise B2B centric services for obvious reasons. What does that mean? How do you bring those together? One, there is the wish list, and also to make it really happen. And Marco pointed out, these are complex things to bring to the market. You need to bring, the automation becomes the center point of this. It means how quickly can you bring partner services, onboard them, mix them together, and then bring that from a B2B2X kind of a perspective. Everything related to the partner ecosystem needs to be automated. From an onboarding to your contract management to settlements to making all this happen needs to be as automated as possible. How do you accelerate the self-onboarding these services? How can you bring their offers as quickly to market and bundle that with your broader offering and bring that to the end consumers? How do you track your partners? If we are talking about a 10x increase or 100x increase in number of partners as we move into 5G, as we move into edge cloud and these kind of services related around that, the number of partner ecosystems will be going up exponentially. You need to track your partners who are successful, who are profitable, who has who have more complaints. Maybe you're going to renegotiate with those guys. How do you manage the overall license management for this huge ecosystem? And as a vendor, as Netcracker, we are doing this very extensively with some of our customers across the globe. Being their central linchpin, bringing it together, and bringing it and maybe providing a white label services as well as others for the end customer. One aspect on top of it which becomes important is the whole joint development aspect, where a strategic partner works with an operator, works with other vertical industries or other partners to create that unique offering. Because it's one about just pass-through services, the other is to create a joint development, create this unique offering, which includes third party, which includes operator assets, and then bring that unique services to the end user. So the whole environment around how do you create this joint development using agile DevOps type of processes to fail fast, to move these services very quickly and manage this whole ecosystem and the revenue sharing relationship across this whole ecosystem very, very effectively.
Awesome. So
can I just jump in here, John? I just want to add on top of what Ari said. I think gone are the days where you just buy a single system or technology, a network, and then you just spend 12 months or more and then forget, and then you have it there for five or more years. We're living in a world where you need continuously change your capabilities. And I think we need to evolve our IT stack and our network stack as well in a way that makes it really agile and easy to change. So it's a combination of off-the-shelf capabilities you can buy from the outside, but as well as building internally to be able to make these changes. I think, as Ari pointed out, agile development here is key. So you need to be able to change things continuously.
Yeah, always changing capabilities and evolving them. Well, then, Ari, tell me, what new BSS capabilities will CSPs need what will they need to enable, I should say, for this platform-based business approach?
I think there are a bunch of different things. One, and I think the core of all of this is to be able to bring together different offers, bundle it together, and then provide that. So it's a combination of not just a connectivity service, but there's all this value-added service. So partner management becomes very critical because you are dealing with plethora of partners who have different contractual agreement with them. So a revenue coming in is shared with multiple parties. So the whole multi-party compensation business model becomes important. Being able to handle alternate payment terms and mechanisms become important. Dealing with licensing as part of it also becomes very, very important. Partner portal, digital marketplace, your CPQ or pricing mechanisms for these services, underlying order management system. And obviously, at the end of it, depending on the type of services that you're rolling out, the rating and charging part of it. So if it's a 5G related, let's say a virtual reality centric services, you might be looking at a convergent system which will be able to support this ultra low latency services and offerings, whereas some of the other services might not need that kind of ultra low latency requirements. Obviously, create a B2B2X kind of a model for the end customer. In fact, we are doing that for some of our top customers. One of the customers which comes to mind is a value-added IT reseller called Bechtle in Germany and Austria and those markets, where they're using that their platform from a very B2B2X kind of a model, where it's not just about rating, charging, partner management for their enterprise customers, but also using some of our cloud native applications in the marketplace. So their end enterprise customers can use, let's say, a CPQ from Netcracker or an order management or an invoice management as a microservices from the same common marketplace, where they're downloading services such as for SD-WAN or business productivity services or Office 365 or any of the other types of services. Same can be played and same can be applied for some of our customers, such as a T-Mobile. We are doing that for next generation IoT type of services, which is on top of their connectivity, etc. services that they're rolling it out for their enterprise customers. So different facets of it. I think the older systems, you had revenue management very separately, the VSS, than the partner management. With this ecosystem, and as it's going to become more and more popular, when we look at 5G and other services, the integration point between partner management, revenue management, settlement, contract management, rating, charging for the services, invoicing, all needs to come together very seamlessly to make this model very effective and, the most importantly, scalable.
Oh, thank you. True.
Just to add on that, and all what Ari has described was very true, and that's clearly the reality. And in front of that, for B2B customers, the importance is as well the customer experience to go through all this, as you were mentioning, Ari, from the quotation to the ordering to the following to the monitoring, and as Mirko was saying about the endless story of moving all these services is where we need very strong DevOps, IT capabilities to automate all that and to put that in front of our customers. It was very clear. Thanks, Ari, for this.
Oh, thank you, Frank. Thanks for adding on to that. Now, Mirko, earlier on, you were talking about evolving capability as service providers, but let's talk about the service providers themselves and how do they need to evolve to be successful in this world? What do they need to change?
Yeah, so again, building on top of what has been said, what I said earlier, I would summarize service providers needs to embrace this digital world. And it's a very holistic approach. You need to look at all the various different elements of it, start from the foundation, so looking at the network. It needs to be transformed from a current static and manual capability into a more dynamic on-demand component, leveraging technologies like software-defined networking and virtualization, so making it more software-like. And I think that's ongoing. But I think alone isn't sufficient. Technology is not the answer to the question. You need to look at your processes, how you support the consumption of these services. There needs to be re-architected around automation first approach. I think we also discussed already the skill sets. The companies to evolve, enterprises, service providers needs to evolve to enable the creation of these capabilities with network and IT becoming one. And on the business model side, you need to adapt and incorporate different way of consuming services. So moving away from, again, static consumption into a more on-demand pay-as-you-go type of model. I think last was we touched on partnership. Your go-to-market needs to incorporate the partners. You just cannot anymore go to market by yourself.
Thanks, Marco.
John, if I may just add on to what Marco said, I think he touched upon some very, very key points. I think the different types of mechanisms or interaction with consumers or enterprises becomes important. So trial, free trial, for example, for a certain duration of time, providing them an extended offering so that you can provide at a discounted rate to his as a referral to his other branch properties, for example. So there are different types of payment mechanisms and business model mechanisms, as well as incentives and cross-product discounts and things like that. That makes all of this much more, it's creative, it's interesting, and that differentiates your offer. Because at the end of the day, if you are just, I am bundling Office 365 and sending it, or I download Office 365 directly from Microsoft's website, not a whole lot of a difference. But if you cross-product bundle that and you provide a better discounting mechanism on top of it, plus you give them a 3-month free just because you are a great customer. And how do I know you're a great customer? Because you have a good customer lifetime value, you have never got into collections, and you always pay on time, and you're a multi-country operator. So you have a single pane of glass to make some of those decisions. The next best action, the next best offer becomes much more customized, much more focused. And it creates a better revenue, uptake overall for the operators.
Thanks, Harry. We'll continue, as earlier on you were talking about a marketplace-driven approach that includes partner offers. Can you explain further how CSPs can build this type of marketplace?
So when I talk about marketplace, it's not a new concept. There has been marketplaces that operators have evolved and used in the past, whether they have created their own marketplace or whether they have white labeled somebody else. The problem with the generation 1 marketplace that happened maybe 5-7 years back is that it used to be a siloed, separate marketplace which used to be there to sell value-added services. So it's a swivel chair approach. Somebody calls in the operator, they will provide voice video connectivity. I'm an SMB, I'm calling in. And then the thing is, there is a marketplace, guys, so it's a different place with a different URL. Go there and you can download productivity apps and things like that. It misses out on a big opportunity, which is people are looking for a convergent experience. It's about the digital customer experience, which is, one umbrella. It's a one kind of a thing where you come in and you are not only providing or getting and buying connectivity-centric services, but also the same portal provides the options and say that, okay, you bought this service, operator. You bought this services. Based on that, your profile, we're understanding, we are providing you recommendations. So you're not leaving that universe. You're in that same universe. And so what happens, you're now bundling your connectivity, non-connectivity services with business applications and services and all of that under the same umbrella, providing the better rates, better discounting, better offers, better suggestions, and things such as those. That becomes very, very important. Something we have been doing with our digital marketplace, our offering with NetTracker Business Cloud is to bring these two sides of the world, the value-added services with the connectivity services, with your IT application, and all under the same umbrella. So what happens, you don't have to jump around. You are there, you are in there, and you can provide that to do that. So it becomes a full stack. It becomes a integrated part of the overall go-to-market strategy for their customers. And obviously, the end customer doesn't have to bump around into different places here for connectivity. You just convert the experience and make it much more seamless for them.
Awesome. Well, Frank didn't forget about you sitting over there. We see you. So I'm going to bring it back over to you, my friend, and even change direction a little bit. So share with me when we talk about yourself and how do you perceive the evolution of the ecosystem and the collaboration between service providers, but as well with vendors or cloud service providers?
Yes, so thanks, John. Because as Mirko was saying, and I will touch on that as well, the concept now is you can't go alone. You need to integrate partner, and so the evolution for all of us, I mean for service provider, is to move on this journey to be a SD-WAN and SASE service provider, providing a great value to our customers. To do so, we need to create and adapt to a much larger ecosystem, as it has been mentioned already. And to do so, first of all, we need to manage accordingly internet from the backbone standpoint, but as well hundreds of internet local service providers through rapid and easy way, thanks to MEF API, for example, but also to monitor their performance with we are doing that with Thousand Eyes probes for, in our case, within Orange. We need to set up a wide footprint platform with software-defined POPs. Mirko was speaking about the software-defined technology. These software-defined POPs, we call them the next gen, but much more than being a name, is the cornerstone of our telco cloud infrastructure. We need to build this telco cloud infrastructure. Then to welcome with Fabric any vendors that will help us to provide the right services to our customers. And we can host them with VNF, for example, in our telco cloud infrastructure. We can also interconnect them with API to make sure that we are together providing services at the right pace to our customers. As I said before, our customers are expecting to get the right technology at the right time. And so it is the way to deliver this to our customers. And last but not least, and you mentioned that in your question, John, to be well interconnected with cloud service provider, hyperscalers, being able to manage a connection to their platform, and also within their platform. More and more we have our customers that are asking us to be able to manage not only the connection to the hyperscaler world, but also inside the hyperscaler world during the different regions, VNet, all these kind of things. The target at the end of the day is zero-touch provisioning. As Mirko was saying, it is a journey to go to full automation for all network and service configuration. We are quite advanced in the backbone, and we want to catch up as well in the service to be around 75-80% of this in 2022. And this network automation and APIization is really the prerequisite for end-to-end on-demand service delivery, because it's really what our customer is expecting: on-demand network services, on-demand security services, and as Ari was mentioning, a lot of services around that. So for instance, we have a customer that can ask a combined service with accesses, internet accesses all over the world, the WAN, virtual functional network function hosting in cloud connectivity or in security. And we need to be able to orchestrate and to deliver this from one portal, as Ari was mentioning, the customer experience and the digital experience, and to monitor all that to our customers. That's really where we need to go, and in this ecosystem, all together with hyperscaler, vendor, and other network service provider.
So that is where we need to go. And let's bring MEF into the equation then. So as a service provider, how do you see the MEF role in that context?
Very important, first of all.
Good answer, like that.
Yeah, like that. But why? Because the pace of technology transformation is amazingly fast. And it's always a period where we are in the balance between going fast and going reliable. And but between these two paths, there's always the path in our industry, in our, let's say, network industry, to go with the interconnection, the standardization, the certification way. This way, why? Because it's the only one to ensure both for customers to make sure that they will benefit from persistent technology, these standards will be managed over time by everyone, by vendors, by service providers, now with cloud service provider as well. And for us, for service provider and vendor, to ensure that our investment in this technology will meet the market. So that's very important what MEF is doing, and is playing an essential role by developing API to interconnect at right level, at network level, but as well at orchestration level, defining the SD-WAN architecture and services, including the way to secure these fabrics by defining SASE, and by looking at that not from a silo standpoint, as I think Harry was saying, but really at a global use case of network transformation. And MEF really is the only operational industry body specialized on this B2B segment and defining rules between service providers and customers, service provider between them, service provider and cloud service provider, and service provider with vendors. The full ecosystem is the one expected by our customer to succeed in their challenges. So MEF is playing a very important role in that.
Thank you so much, Frank. And thank you all for being a part of MEF Episode 6, Federations for Digital Transformation. All right, let me go back to the studio the same way I got here. Check this out, gentlemen. Watch this. Wait. What? I better go ahead. Well, I enjoyed my visit and conversation with Mirko, Frank, and Ari about evolving infrastructures. I hope that you did too. Thanks, gentlemen, for sharing your time and expertise with us. It was great stuff. With our final deep dive of the day, we're going to take a look at standardization for inter-carrier automation. For that, I'm joining special guest Simon Altman, VP Business Development, Amartis, Daniele Mancuso, Chief Product Management, Sparkle, and Laurent Savet, Senior Director, Network Architecture and Engineering, Lumen. Guys, beam me up. Guys? What? Must be out of range. Well, thankfully, at least I still got that magic thing going for me. Oh. All right, ladies and gentlemen, here they are, excited that they're on the screen with me. Glad that you can share some time and share so much of your expertise. If you don't mind, and Daniele, why don't we start off with yourself? If you could each just give me a brief moment about yourselves and what you're excited about being here for.
Sure, John, thank you. Hello, everybody. My name is Daniele Mancuso. I am Chief Product Management at Sparkle. So basically responsible for all of the products and clusters of the company, starting from the very low undersea submarine cables up to the cloud. And I also hold positions as a MEF director and C-band director. Thank you.
Awesome. No, thank you so very much. And Simon, why don't you take us next?
Thank you, John. So Simon Altman, VP of Business Development at Amartis. Amartis are a vendor, a software solution developer, both in orchestration and automation. But in the last couple of years, we've been very much driving within MEF and our customers inter-carrier automation. So obviously, I'm super excited to have the chance to talk about this subject with my colleagues on this call today. Thank you.
No, thank you. Thanks for being with us. And of course, Lauren.
Thank you, John. I'm glad to be here today. So I head up the network architecture and engineering at Lumen in EMEA, essentially responsible for the technology function, similarly to Daniele, from going up from the subsea all the way to the cloud.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. And Lauren, I'm going to stay with you and we're going to jump right into some questions for our audience here. If you could help me understand, what is our common definition for federations? Can we agree between panelists such consortium, ecosystems, or community of interest actually exists right now today?
That's right. That's a very, very good point, John. And I was keen for us to start this session having here both Simon and Daniel, expert in this field, between all of us to actually agree on what a federation means. I feel that over the past few years, the term federation would have evolved in the context of us pushing out the digital experience and helping out businesses transforming across the industry, and perhaps now the digital service provider actually responding to the needs of the federation. The federation being perhaps an alliance of businesses sharing a common value goal. With the underlying federated network relying on different suppliers to support similar attributes, like, for example, a common identity management. The implication, going back to the service provider, to the digital service provider, is that we have going forward to support orchestrated services, multi-cloud diversity, and software-defined networks. To support the goal of transformation, digital transformation of federations going forward.
Awesome. Well, then continue for me, if you will. To what extent does an API marketplace really support the digital transformation of federations?
API marketplace, I feel personally that every single carrier, every single service provider out there will have their own. We're all going to be building the tools, the platform available for our customers to have the building block, helping them out through their transformation journey. They will all provide artifacts, SDKs, APIs, Postman scripts. How do we actually prove their value? I think that's what's key for me. And going forward, I come a standardized approach, a story that our vision that the MEF is actually pushing out there. This standardized approach will actually allow our end users and customers to seamlessly switch from one digital service provider to another, again, supporting their transformation, supporting the evolution of the business in the context of the fourth industrial revolution, or Industry 2.0 as it's more commonly known in EMEA. I think the API marketplace should have there all the tools, all the attributes available for our customers and customers to actually support their development and their evolution going forward.
Awesome. Thank you, Laurent. So, Daniele, how do we continue on this and think about service providers, and how can service providers really cope with this revolution that we're seeing?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question, John, and thank you for asking me. Actually, it's really a revolution. Today, service provider has to cope with requirements coming from their enterprise customers that in turn are driven by their consumer customers. What is driving today is the experience that consumers are having in their smartphone every day when they are using apps. So enterprises wants to develop apps that are satisfying those requirements, and they need probably to implement infrastructure, security, connectivity, and all other kind of components of this very complex service chaining in a matter of minutes, because the consumer customers are educated to receive everything now, everything on demand. They want to use, to pay for what they use, and that's it, and not to keep on paying. So, first of all, service providers are evolving and are specializing on different layers of this complex service chaining. It's very unlikely that a service provider will be able to provide what Laurent was saying before, a digital service in its entire end-to-end flavor all at once within its own infrastructure. That's why also the federation must evolve. It's not simply to order a piece of connectivity from somebody else that you have contractual relationships with, but it's also to implement another layer of the service using something that somebody else is specialized in. Now, when you think to this end-to-end scenario, the common language is something of paramount importance. So API, standardization, common way to exchange parameters such as address location, such as SLA that the customer expects, such as the contracted timetable is needed, and it's a must. So service providers needs to implement all those functionalities within their OSS and BSS systems, but also service providers should start having partnership agreements for pieces of the stack on which they are not specialized in.
Wow. So if they're implementing all those functionalities and the different layers, as you mentioned, I mean, how do you feel this is truly affecting the Sparkle business?
Well, if we want to analyze what Sparkle is doing there, I believe we need to look a little bit wider than the boundaries of Sparkle and look at the entire team group, the Telecom Italia group, what we are doing there. Team group is evolving towards a kind of specialization per each company of the group. Sparkle is, of course, the looking glass of Telecom Italia out of the Italian borders. But through other companies within the Telecom Italia perimeter, we are able to offer IoT capabilities, where Sparkle is providing the international connectivities and Olivetti is providing the application layers and the device management. We can provide outstanding security service through Telsi, which is another entity within the group. We can provide the cloud functionalities, not just workloads, infrastructure, and the localization, but also security cloud functions within the data center of Nuvol, which is a new company that was recently spinned off by Telecom Italia. So if you put all this together, this is really a very small ecosystem within the same shareholder, but in turn able to provide connectivity services, cloud services, IoT connectivity and IoT experience, security. And if you multiply this and goes out of the Telecom Italia boundaries and take what Sparkle has negotiated in terms of agreement, coverage, global connectivity with all the partners that we have interconnected with, you understand that we are really implementing the promise of the Federation. We are really keeping the promise of the Federation.
Wow. Daniele, thank you so much for jumping in. Is that Lorena wants to add in as well?
Yeah, I mean, very similarly to the experience at Sparkle. So Lumen actually renamed from CenturyLink in September last year, and North American viewers are probably very, very familiar with the CenturyLink brand, obviously being a very large carrier in North America. One of the reasons or the rationale for the renaming was to actually connect more directly with the imperatives of the fourth industrial revolution, having a digital business which is manipulating data, analyzing data, and acting upon it, and that data has an implication from a digital service provider standpoint. In regards to orchestrated services, the multi-cloud diversity, and the software-defined network approach. The Lumen renaming also meant separating the network from the platform, having an overlaying platform supporting all the digital experience for the customers of Lumen, but also other operators globally, to actually, again, through the means of an API marketplace, use the building blocks to transform your business end to end. So it means really from our perspective at Lumen, having multi-service orchestration and automation, to deploy software to the right cloud in the right places and actually securely operate it, to operate a multi-cloud infrastructure with a range of interoperable computing models, which will vary from one business to another, one federation to another. And if you go down below the platform level, to actually run a high performance dynamic networking network, having the attributes to connect building, data centers, cloud, and dynamically adjust the bandwidth based on the workload requirements which Daniele just referred to. Again, similarly to Sparkle, I feel that many digital service providers across the world are actually rethinking their business model to align against the demand from our customer base, the demand from the federations going forward.
Thank you, Lauren, for adding on to that. And of course, Daniele. So Simon, I'm going to jump over to yourself if you don't mind. Does a service provider need a state-of-the-art, fully automated BOSS before they implement LSO Sonata?
Well, typically, yes. If you've got a fully singing and fully orchestrated network, then you can be more responsive, you can be more dynamic from collecting an order from your customer and fulfilling it within your own network and being able to, as Daniela and Laurent mentioned, be able to go out to my ecosystem of partners and stitch everything up. Yes, that will work a lot quicker. But as they normally say, perfection is the enemy of progress. So by doing that, you can end up in very long expensive development cycles, whilst you're waiting for the true advantage of automation to come along. So you can start off by deploying Sonata. There are systems out there and where you can decouple slightly from your BOSS, provide that automation with the APIs first of all, and then as you upgrade your BOSS to be more automated as you go along, then you can incorporate that as you go along. That allows you, instead of tackling one huge project in one go, you can, as people like to say, how do I eat an elephant? Bite by bite. It allows you to start automating in front of your customers and perfecting your solutions as you go along.
Bite by bite. It's the only way we can start it, right? Well, then let's look at a typical service provider's, their partner ecosystem, and it spans the globe. So not all of them follow MEF-LSO, but also TM Forum. Therefore, is MEF-LSO Sonata seen as a solution for only part of the market and in conflict with TM Forum?
Well, as you know, or maybe people don't know, MEF APIs are actually based on TM Forum APIs. So the void there is not as big as people expect. And I think there is a lot of talk, do I go down MEF based or TM Forum based? Actually, there's a lot of commonality here that perhaps people aren't familiar with. So TM Forum APIs were actually designed for flexibility, i.e. so Daniela and Laurent can decide on certain implementations, how they would want to work together based on TM Forum APIs, gives you the full flexibility, but it doesn't necessarily mean that what they've deployed will allow John, let's say you are an operator in the US, to just plug and play in. And that's the real work that MEF has done, taking the TM Forum APIs and creating a true plug and play. So those people have already developed or deployed TM Forum APIs. It's not back to the drawing board. In fact, they're in a big advantage because the gap is very small. And perhaps the history was that when TM Forum and MEF were developing and you're only looking at your own internal APIs, it really doesn't matter how you deployed because I'm not sharing my APIs with anyone else. So for the true federation, we all need to speak the same language. If all the world speak the same language, we'd all get along a lot better. So the idea is APIs aren't new. The problem is that everyone has their own flavor of APIs. So by having a true plug and play and adopting the same language, then we can all talk to each other. The costs of onboarding partners go down hugely. And that allows Daniela or Laurent to create an ecosystem today. And then tomorrow when a new service is spun up, maybe I need to add additional partners to my ecosystem. And that can be done very responsive. It can be done that dynamically, like the service providers want to offer their services. So there's a lot of harmonization between the two. And we're all talking almost the same language. We're almost there.
Well, and you said everyone has their own flavor of APIs. Then continue, Simon. I mean, how can providers then cope with interoperability of tens or even hundreds of partners when there's a different product offerings and commercial arrangements?
It becomes a real headache, and I'm sure Danielle and Laurent live this every day. And you can see Danielle and Laurent are probably not as grey as I am, but heading that way with this. It's horrible. It means if everyone turns up to the show with their own APIs, you end up managing hundreds of partners with hundreds of different matrices of interoperability. And then that's only for one product. Add another product into there, and then you start the matrix from the beginning. It will take years or months and months and months, even with an established interoperability with a partner. It will certainly take months to spin up new services and products. I think the industry, the service provider industry, has seen a lot what the hyperscalers have done, the Amazons, how they've started from a greenfield site, which was obviously their advantage, and can spin up a new service in days. And that's what having an API means. It means everyone's speaking the same language, and then it allows Daniela and Laurent to add their, what is a service provider? It's someone who's providing a service. And the competition will be around the service that each person provides, or using a common language. I can bring in players who add and complement what I'm doing. And that may be slightly different that Laurent does, that Daniela does. And that's the differentiation today. Not do I use an API A or API B. That's not the differentiation. That's the hurdle in the market today.
Awesome. So, Loren, then looking at it in this fashion, what are the benefits of a standardized marketplace to stand up frictionless supply chains?
I feel that to that question, the answer in very, very short answer is to support a faster introduction of innovation. And we've seen that to some extent for the past 12, 15, 18 months with COVID, for example. With COVID affecting many countries across the world, a requirement of having workforces moving from home, working from home, and the explosion of a new technology requirement based on the enterprise. Having some standardized marketplace, API marketplace, again supporting some of these changes, which were all COVID related. I think it's an important new paradigm, which in many ways trigger the acceleration of some of the changes we were anticipating to see across the industry, or at least across our customer landscape. I think from a MEF standpoint, participation to the incubation or working groups on a regular basis give the opportunity to all of these end users to actually shape what those standards going forward should be, or what they will be. They will eventually support or provide the building block to that digital transformation. So it's critical to have not only the service provider, not only having Daniele, Simon, and I meeting on a regular basis at a MEF meeting, sharing that vision and trying to find solutions for the whole market at what we should be doing going forward, but having a much wider scope of maybe federation stakeholders coming in, joining us for this discussion at quarterly, weekly meetings, and agreeing on what the terms of the standardized marketplace should be going forward.
All right.
Yeah, I fully agree with you, Laurent. Also taking into consideration that the type of the actors is quite changing. At the beginning, it was just telcos, so we could talk for an entire day and perfectly understand each other. But today, on the arena, there are also hyperscalers, there are OTTs. They are talking slightly different language, and they need to have clear reasons in order to adopt this openness, this federation model. At the end of the day, the benefits are evident to everybody, but to try and hammer a business case sometimes is not so easy. But this is also an effort that within MEF, I believe we are doing really as an industry, moving all together. Here in this call, we have myself and Roran, representation of the service providers. Simon is representing the system integrators. We are working with Microsoft, that, as you know, is sitting in MEF with Sean Hochul in MEF board of directors. So there is a movement. Also, MEF itself is evolving. We are bringing new stuff to the plate. We are not simply writing documents and letting somebody else to read and implement like the Bible or the Gospel. We are also building proof of concept that are really showing how to implement this stuff that we are writing. We are also building severe certification programs that are ensuring that all the people that are following the program will be able to interoperate with each other. And finally, we are also putting, still as MEF, a testing platform, because whenever you want to onboard with another partner, you need to be sure that what you completed within your BOSS infrastructure is suitable to be used by somebody else that wants to interconnect. So all this together is the new MEF, all this together is the new industry, and all this is the new the evolution that we are doing all together.
Well, and Daniele, I love how you kind of pull that together. You're talking about MEF, how we're working together. Do you see that increasing over the next 3 to 5 years? What's the big picture going to continue to look like?
Well, it must, and I see it evolving. I see really a number of different players entering. And look, if you see the recent history of new MEF members, you will notice that there are companies that are not really telcos, service providers, carriers. Look, a couple of years ago, joined Salesforce. Very recently, ServiceNow was joining. Why? Because they understand that what we discussed at the beginning of this very interesting panel, meaning that it's not just to interconnect, but it's to provide different services in different layers of the stack. Now, think that today, multinational enterprises with a very well-organized IT department are able to order and implement an IT infrastructure directly within their infrastructural system. So if they use ServiceNow, ServiceNow can instantiate through Ansible or through other tools infrastructures, build virtual machines, containers, and stuff like that. Why the same shouldn't be possible with connectivity, especially for those enterprises that needs frequent change management, that needs a lot frequently to change the bandwidth or the destinations. Think about an enterprise using ServiceNow, ordering an infrastructure as a service and attaching it with the private, secure connectivity services up to the application and up to the cloud or up to the data center. That's the future that we see all together. That's the future that we are building in MEF. And that's what I want to see in the next 3 to 5 years.
That is awesome. It is indeed the future we're building at MEF and building that future together as this unit. So thank you. Thank you, Daniele, for sharing your expertise, as well as Simon and Loren. Any closing comments that you'd like to make?
Well, stick with us. Come to work in the incubation groups. We are building and we are writing the future. So it's your opportunity.
You've got
Absolutely,
it. Simon,
I
go
concur
ahead.
with that comment.
Yeah, just to add what Daniela has said, MEF is not about a small list of service providers or even vendors who have been at it for many, many years. MEF is solving problems that are out there, not problems that don't exist. So the more people who come and join and put their problems on the table, I think they'll be very surprised that their problems are common to most, if not a lot of service providers. And by sharing those problems, very quickly we come up with solutions. And we see that as an integrator, working with bringing in different service providers, working with each other, different elements, as Daniela or Laurent said, we're working with, it's not just one service provider, connectivity service provider with another. At the end of the day, the customer is more savvy. He wants to be more flexible. he is actually shedding his IT expertise and wants to go again to the provider of service, the service provider, and say, look, guys, I need a video conference call at a certain hour. I don't know how much bandwidth I need, but I just need some storage. I want to record it. I want some security. So service providers, again, going back to this whole ecosystem, need to be savvy, need to be flexible, bringing different people talking different languages, or bringing their different expertise to provide that end result of what the enterprise is looking for.
Awesome. Thank you, Simon. Loren, how about a chance for a closing comment to wrap us up for this segment?
Maybe I'll take my MEF co-chair hat here at the Commercial and Business Committee and put it on. And yeah, again, a rallying cry, a call for people to from all from a varied range of backgrounds and experiences to join us, to help us shaping the future of the industry. I'll echo Simon's comment here and say that yes, we will only be fixing tomorrow's problem by discussing, sharing, and reviewing together today. So yeah, the more the merrier, and it's definitely not a service provider play anymore. We're seeing many enterprises and enterprises forming part of the federation actually joining us on a regular basis, and I'm looking forward to have all of these people joining us on weekly call going forward.
All right. Thank you, Loren. Thank you all for sharing your time and your expertise. That's going to wrap up this deep dive. So I get to hand it back to the incredible host of episode number 6, John Petz. I really enjoyed that interview. Thanks so much, Simon, Daniele, and Laurent, for closing out our discussion today with the importance of standardization of intercarrier automation. As digital service providers build complex platforms that rely more and more on a whole suite of standardized APIs supporting intercarrier automation, the ability for a complex set of components to operate harmoniously in delivering applications to an end user will be needed. In short, automation requires standards, and that's where MEF comes in. Resistance is futile. You will be assimilated. Well, I've learned a lot today, and I hope you did too, as we explored the topic of federating for digital transformation, and we did it while having some fun and paying homage to Star Trek. You know, ironically, it had a lot of connections to our topic today, including predicting the use of some of the same work-from-anywhere technologies we use every day. For example, Lieutenant Uhura had the first Bluetooth. Of course, the rest of the crew only had flip phones, but both technologies were well ahead of their time. A special thanks to all of our sponsors for making access to today's awesome content possible. Make sure you check out their sites on this platform after the show for additional content that may be of interest to you and opportunities to connect directly with their representative. Plus, don't miss out on the opportunity to connect one-to-one with each other right here on this site. And thank you, our audience, for joining us for another episode of the MEF Infinite Edge series. Don't forget to tune in to our next episode, Superior Customer Experience in a Digital World, airing July 7th. You don't want to miss it. Until then, stay safe. And we'll see you back here as we continue to explore the infinite possibilities of the digital world, across the network core, the cloud, and as always, the edge. To quote Mr. Spock, change is the essential process of all existence. Live long and prosper.